Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the 5-day business challenge here at This Can't Be That Hard. Today we're talking pricing. And the primary objective of today's lesson is taking the phrase price your worth and throwing it out the window. So raise your hand if you've ever wondered if your pricing was the source of problems for your business. Now, if you're like me, you're probably not sitting in your room actually raising your hand. But forgive me if I'm imagining a sea of hands out there. I hardly know a photographer who has not stressed and struggled over pricing. And most photographers continue to stress and struggle about it a lot longer than necessary. But that struggle isn't necessary. The truth is that pricing is just a formula that even the most math challenged of you can work through. The reason pricing feels hard to a lot of us is that a lot of us have a lot of limiting beliefs and mindsets around money and sales and what people value. A long time ago, I worked as a waiter at a very fancy French restaurant in New York with an incredible wine list that won awards. And one of the things that I got to do as a perk of that job was to participate in a program that they called Wine College, and it was taught by 3 master sommeliers. Every week, we'd sit down and learn all about a different grape and style of wine, and we'd taste wine and take tests, maybe not in that order. Of course, the tastings were the most fun part. They would open a whole bunch of wine, including several bottles that sold for like $200 or $300 each, and we'd get to try them and talk about them and act very fancy. And of course, in my real life, I was drinking $5 bottles of wine, if anything, because I was a 23-year-old kid waiting tables in New York. So one week toward the end of the 3-month course, we were talking about rosé, and the instructor lined up about 10 rosés for us to taste in a blind tasting where you couldn't see what you were drinking. And we all go down the row and we sip our wines, and they're having us describe what we were tasting and talk about whether we liked it and all of that. And of course, by this point of the course, we all fancied ourselves pretty well versed. It was in wine and all things wine speak. So as it turned out, we're all talking about how much we love this bottle of wine and how great it is. And then the sommelier shows us the label, and the bottle ended up being this bottle of white Zin that retails for around $9, and you could buy it at any grocery store. It just so happened to have been a particularly good bottle that had won a bunch of awards. And so that was a pretty exceptional value. But the sommelier had a point. When we sell wine, we aren't selling a particular grape or a flavor profile or a structure. What we're selling is a story. Most people can tell the difference between something that's good and something that's bad, but not many people can necessarily objectively tell the difference between something that's good and something that's great. It's really more about how it's presented. So a bottle of wine that's sort of sloshed into a plastic cup and shoved in your hand at a crowded college bar objectively tastes different than the same bottle of wine that is lovingly opened and presented in beautiful stemware in a nicely lit restaurant with amazing food. So there's this charge your worth phrase that gets thrown around, and I think it's dangerous for a few reasons. First, let's just be clear, and maybe this is the mom in me talking, but you are worth way more than whatever it is that you're charging. I'm worth way more than what I'm charging. You can be charging millions of dollars and you're still worth more than that. Second, if you take the phrase to mean charge what your photography is worth, well then no wonder you're feeling frustrated and confused. What is photography worth? Are you guys familiar with the photo that holds the record for the highest price that was ever paid for a photo? You can look it up. It's called Rhein, Rhein 2. And it sold for $4.3 million at auction. It is objectively a very ordinary looking photo of a gray river on a gray day. Can someone give me a reasonable explanation of why that's worth over $4 million? People talk about if your house was burning down, what would you grab? And family photo albums are always a big point on the list. No one ever thinks about grabbing the magazine on their coffee table, even though it's filled with very expensive, high-paid commercial photographs. And I would venture to say that even if you had the originals of those, they wouldn't make the cut in the fire unless they were of your family. And then what about this? I recently hired a very well-known, very talented photographer to make photos of myself and my kids. She charges less than I do. Are her photos worth less than mine? I assure you, Being able to actually be in the photo with my kids is worth a lot to me. My point is that what you charge has nothing to do with what your photographs are worth. So stop trying to figure that out. If you're in business, what you charge for your photographs should be based on what you need to make to be profitable and the way you choose to run your business. And let's be clear, profit is not a fixed number. It all depends on your desired salary and your expenses. And those things can change. I recommend that you run your numbers about once a year to ensure that you are pricing for profit. And the basic equation at the heart of figuring out what profit means for you in your business is profit equals total income minus expenses. And then your expenses can be further divided down into your desired salary, including your taxes and your benefits and your retirement savings, and then your fixed expenses and your client expenses. And the worksheets that I'm going to give you go into way more detail about exactly what those things are and how you can calculate them, and you don't need to do those today. But once you have figured out how much you need to make to be profitable, you can work backward to determine your per session minimum and set your prices accordingly. And that's it. So your assignment today is to download the worksheets. Then I want you to schedule 3 2-hour blocks of time in the next 4 weeks to complete them. 2 hours each is probably more than you're going to need depending on your records, but I want you to give this task its due time. Being profitable is the first step in a sustainable business. Once you've downloaded the worksheets and scheduled the time to complete them, I want you to log into the Facebook group and share a GIF, or an emoji that describes how you feel when you're thinking and talking about pricing your photography. I feel like we can all use a bit of levity as we get nervous around this particular task, okay? And hopefully I'll see you on the live Q&A on Facebook at 2:30 Eastern Time. I hope you have a great day. Bye for now.